Home Office has no idea how many asylum seekers have gone missing. The Home Office has no data on a third of people. We've got so many illegals that we're running out of hotels.
Over 14,000 lost illegals on the streets. £2.1 billion wasted on migrant hotels. A 23% surge in crime. Police cordons collapsed. And in just 3 hours, the leaked statistics exposing thousands of lost illegals turned entire districts into war zones. These crowds were not negotiable. They branded Starmer a traitor of the British nation. At 6:10 p.m., wave after wave demanded the scrapping of the Human Rights Act, the law that effectively bans the deportation of illegals. Under its cover, migrants claim in court that they have suddenly become gay or converted to Christianity, arguing they face death if returned home. It's impossible to verify, and they are ruthlessly exploiting it. Karma made his position sharply clear. Britain's laws are not up for repeal. I urge tolerance toward all communities. That statement became the death sentence for his career. At 6:24, a Stop the Boats faction began destroying a police van. Fresh units were immediately deployed to crush the rears. But then hell on earth broke loose at AT 641. Fireworks were fired directly into police lines, painting the sky a blood-red color. Debris cracked against helmets. The chanting stopped. All that remained was the sound of battle. The problem is that these lost illegals are totally invisible to the state. Thousands of machete wielders, sexual attackers, and drug traffickers had no names and no faces in police databases. Opposition leader Nigel Farage issued a scathing response. 14,000 is just the number the state wants us to believe. Analysts warned the real numbers could be 3 to 4 times higher. In fact, it is an army of potential criminals across the UK. In 3 hours, reports emerged of 14 separate fires in hotels, causes under investigation. 62 arrests, 142 hospitalized. It has been announced that Starmer will address the nation by dawn. From London to Belfast, the nation did not sleep. In 47 local stores, fireworks were stripped from the shelves in just 30 minutes. One chain store owner in Northern Ireland claimed there was an urgent request to pull fireworks off the shelves. By 10:23 p.m., a desperate radio message cracked through in South Belfast. We didn't train for maniacs with these rockets. We are retreating from the Sector B. Diplomats in Brussels condemned the extremists overrunning Britain. Starmer dismissed them as a tiny fringe of thugs with zero public support. Simultaneously, mainstream media outlets pumped out headlines blaming far-right groups and urged the public to stay indoors. Calling demands for an immediate exit from the European Court of Human Rights were chanted across Stamford Street in London. Inside the Home Office, advisors were already whispering that if Starmer continues to gamble with this tolerance agenda, he could lose his premiership within days. Yet, at that very moment, 3 fresh boats packed with illegal were spotted, breaching the Channel coast. In just 8 minutes, they had scattered into the coastal towns, vanishing without a trace. Suddenly, Starmer's address was pushed back by another 3 hours. Then came the news that threatens to drag Britain down to third world status. A red threat level has been online declared for women and children. In some classrooms, teachers were forced to draw up safe route maps desperate to ensure students wouldn't stumble into a grooming gang on their walk home. A TikTok clip exploded with 6.2 million views in just 1 hour, featuring activist Tommy Robinson issuing a savage update. Right now, police platoon are arresting the lads. Yet, in this last hour alone, 5 machete attacks have struck across the country. At 7:40, live broadcast feeds were mysteriously cut, citing technical faults, just as police vehicles were being overturned amidst a hail of fireworks and shattered glass. Nigel Farage's chilling warning that monsters roam invisible after sunset has become a terrifying reality, as these untrackable figures dissolve into grooming gangs and drug networks, without a single fingerprint on file. This is the direct result of a leadership that prioritizes the Human Rights Act over the safety of its own citizens, leaving the public to face a phantom army the state admits it can no longer find. On Twitter, political experts offered a compromisito finally make the law fit for purpose, closing the loopholes exploited for your sexual orientation and gender claims. also abolishing the mental health defense, where illegals swear in court that deportation will trigger fatal depression back home. As Keir Starmer left Parliament, a journalist from a right-wing outlet attempted to thrust this document right in his face. The Prime Minister chose to ignore it, preferring to answer a soft question from another reporter about the terrifying climate agenda affecting Europe. Tonight, Britain isn't just facing an immigration crisis. It is facing a phantom insurgency. Keir Starmer staked his reputation on the sanctity of the Human Rights Act. Tonight, that act is being weaponized against the British people. When an illegal arrival claims a sudden religious conversion or a shift in sexuality to avoid deportation, the courts bow down. It invites fraud. The thousands who vanished tonight did so because the system is designed to let them loose, not lock them up. The machete attacks reported across the country are the direct result of a deportation policy Starmer refuses to reform. Britain is being endangered. Britain is being sold out to international courts. For years, border force officers have privately raised the same alarm. The hotel system is a sieve, it's broken. Tonight confirmed their worst fears. Data from the streets reveals a pattern of total evasion. The same lack of documentation. The same use-off legal loopholes to store removal. The same disappearances into the gray economy. And the same expansion of criminal networks that the police can no longer penetrate. An interview on Facebook reached 8 million views in 4 hours. In the video, with comments disabled, an arrival from Africa made ablant admission. In France, they require mandatory French lessons, registration, and official employment. But in England, you don't need to learn English. Andy Urey placed in a 3-star hotel with 3 meals a day. The 24-year-old masked man insisted that the British government is very tolerant and welcoming, which is why thousands risk their lives to cross the channel in small boats. The most terrifying fact is that Whitehall knows it. They possess the true figures. They know the 14,000 statistic is a conservative estimate. They see the phantom population swelling. But under karma, every attempt to close these loopholes gets blocked by the same excuse. It violates their human rights. Britain used to be protected by borders. Now it is ruled by loopholes. Fear of the European Court. Fear of deportation tribunals. Fear of being called intolerant for demanding safety. Britannia's witnessing a state-sanctioned disappearance. The decision to let 14,000 unvetted males vanish into the suburbs was not a mistake. It was a calculated surrender to the European Court of Human Rights. No fingerprints, no names, no histories. The so-called red alert issued for women and children is the admission that the government has lost the ability to protect the vulnerable from an invisible predator class. Karma believes that adherence to a foreign court is more important than the safety of a British street. He hides behind the human rights shield while grooming gangs exploit those very rights to prey on local communities. A British pensioner who forgets a tax payment is hunted down by state. An illegal entrant who discards his passport is allowed to dissolve into the night, free to establish criminal networks without fear of deportation. It is a two-tier justice system where the law is a weapon against the citizen and a shield for the criminal. The courts are clogged with bogus claims of sudden Christian conversion and newfound sexual orientations. Unchecked lies that paralyze deportation flights while the streets burn. Whitehall is terrified, not of the mobs setting fire to hotels, but of the headlines if they dare to detain them. The Starmer's refusal to scrap the Human Rights Act has turned the United Kingdom into a sanctuary for the world's wanted and a prison for its own law-abiding people. As police lines crumble and the sky glows with the light of burning vans, the message is undeniable. The government has ceased to govern. It has merely become the administrator of its own demise. This is not just incompetence. It is the price country burn, then offend the sensibilities of a European judge. The scale of this deception goes far beyond a simple loss of contact. Intelligence analysts are now warning that the figure of 14,000 is merely the sanitized number cleared for public release. While the true quantity of undocumented males operating within the United Kingdom likely dwarfs that estimate by a magnitude of 3, we are witnessing the creation of a shadow state within our own borders. a phantom demographic that consumes public resources, utilizes the NHS, and occupies housing stock while contributing absolutely nothing to the exterior. These individuals have not just slipped through the net. They have been actively emboldened by a legal framework that treats the destruction of identification documents as a savvy tactical move rather than a criminal offense. Every smartphone footage leaking from the northern town shows the same disturbing pattern of military jetmen congregating in areas where local police forces have effectively ceased top patrol. The Home Office has allowed a parallel society to metastasize where British law is treated as a suggestion and the Human Rights Act is wielded as a weapon of conquest. Legal firms in London are reportedly coaching new arrivals on exactly which script or site. It is an industrial-scale mockery of the asylum system, where a sudden unverifiable epiphany about one's sexuality instantly paralyzes the deportation machinery. Meanwhile, the British taxpayer is funding the very legal aid that these lawyers use to block the removal of dangerous criminals. Nation is paying for own national humiliation. The social contract is evaporating before their eyes because a government cannot demand loyalty from its citizens while it grants immunity to foreign nationals who despise its values. Security services are blind, unable to run background checks on men who technically do not exist in any database. Facial recognition technology is useless against a population that has no digital footprint. This data blackout is the perfect breeding ground for organized crime to establish a permanent foothold in the suburbs. County lines, drug gangs are recruiting from this pool of untraceable labor, knowing that if a ghost is caught, he can simply give a false name and vanish again upon bail. The red alert for women is not hysteria. That it is the statistical inevitability of following thousands of unvetted men from misogynistic cultures to roam freely without supervision. Parents in the Midlands are organizing private neighborhood watches because they no longer believe the state will intervene before it is too late. The riots erupting outside. These hotels are the desperate scream of communities that feel they are being erased. They see their town centers transformed, their daughters harassed, and their concerns dismissed as bigotry by a metropolitan elite living in gated communities. Karma's refusal to confront the ECR isn't a moral stance. It is an act of political cowardice that places the approval of Strasbourg judges above the survival of British civil order. This action is presiding over the dissolution of the border itself. If a nation cannot define who is inside it, it ceases to be a nation. The burning vehicles and shattered storefronts are merely the symptoms of a much deeper rot. This isn't just a crisis of migration. It is a crisis of sovereignty under the cover of the British laws. A phantom population has been allowed to fester, creating shadow communities where British law no longer applies. Machete crimes are rising. Drug gangs operate with impunity. And the police are legally powerless to touch the men responsible because they have no names to put on a warrant. Even as the riots intensified and the chant of "Stop the Boats" echoed through the capital, Downing Street was more focused on defending the European Convention than addressing so-called red alert issued for its own women and children. This is how a country surrenders its future, not to an external army, but to a legal charade that prioritizes the comfort of the criminal over the safety of the citizen. Starr can plead for tolerance. The media can look away, but the 14,000 ghosts remain, and they are not leaving. Britain is now ruled by a class of politicians who would rather let drug networks expand than admit that the asylum system is being scammed by fake converts and economic opportunists. If these missing thousands were British business owners evading tax, the dragon would be total and the arrests immediate. But because they are unverified arrivals exploiting a broken treaty, the government's instinct is not to find them, but to forgive them. The silence from Downing Street regarding the whereabouts of these 14,000 men isn't just negligence. It is complicity that we are watching the industrialization of asylum fraud, where legal firms are now effectively operating as travel agents for the underworld. They hand out scripts that turn economic migrants into persecuted victims within minutes of arrival. The Home Office has become a rubber stamp bureaucracy for bogus conversion. Claims that everyone knows are lies. UK, Dharma refuses to close the Christian convert loophole because he is more afraid of the Guardian opinion pages than he is of the gangs taking over British streets. This isn't just about immigration numbers anymore. It is about the total subversion of the truth that we have foreign nationals laughing at our judicial system, while British grandmothers are afraid to walk to the shops. The red alert warning effectively tells women that their freedom of movement has been cancelled to accommodate the unvetted arrival of men from cultures that view them as property. It is a surrender of public space. Entire neighborhoods are being socially engineered without a single vote being cast. The police know that if they enter these new ghost enclaves, they will be met with violence that the political class will blame on community tensions. Officers are demoralized knowing they are risking their lives, tourist men who will be back on the street by morning using a different alias. The biometric system is obsolete. When the person in front of you has 10 different identities, we are funding our own replacement. Every penny of tax money spent on these lost migrants is an investment in the decline of British safety. The riots we see are the inevitable result of a social contract that has been torn up and thrown in the face of the working class. They see their history erased and their safety bartered away for the sake of international treaties written 70 years ago.